What up, Marsh Pod? Recording this on a Thursday night, so a big news day and a big news week. I kind of like this twice a week schedule. Gives us a chance to dive in and recap a week of activity. And there was quite a bit of it. So let's start with Lone Star. That was the news that came out earlier today. They're seen as a quote-unquote potential landing spot for top-tier recruits. Who? What stars? What top-tier recruits are we talking about? Nobody's named. And truth be told, I haven't heard any names directly linked to Lone Star, but let's read some tea leaves. Royce Anderson is a name that's been previously reported as a top 3. Does that mean he's going there? If he is, and this says top-tier recruits, plural, is he going alone? Those, I think, are potential questions, but look across the league. Top-tier recruits, guys that we don't currently know their landing spot. Benari James, that's a name that we don't know. Renzo Bryant, who I'm going to get to here in a second. We don't know where he's headed. Could he be considered a top-tier recruit? Cam Jones, he's been ruled as potentially leaving H-Town. Is he going there? It's worth reading into. It's worth keeping an eye on. We talked about on Monday, watch Yacht Club, right? Watch Yacht Club. If guys continue to get linked there, does that mean that's where they're going? Or if they miss, obviously they get linked there, that may be where they go, but if they miss on them, what the potential ramifications of not getting a star is or not getting some of these high-end recruits. Lone Star is now positioning themselves, it appears, to potentially get some of them. I haven't really heard any direct corrections there or direct lines of stars, but the fact that it's out there means something. All right, next, DJ Davis. Earlier in the week, it was reported that, I think Siege reported this one, his top 3 was Bay Area, Showtime, and Best. What I've heard is it seems he's leaning Best Coast Ballers. If yes, what does that mean? If he is in fact leaning Best Coast over Bay Area, what does that mean? Well, he gets to be the top guy, but they still have work to be done. They've got 2 guys on that roster right now. I've heard Jamie Ramos linked there, but I don't want to really dive onto that because I think Ramos, he's maybe one of the most talked about recruits right now. I think there's a bidding frenzy for him. I'm not going to call it a war, but I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes with Ramos where I don't think he has his pick of suitors, but he's definitely got a list of teams that are interested in him, and he's probably got a chance to choose where he wants to go, more so than some of the other recruits. But let's say, hypothetically, we've heard a lot of them working out together, Ramos and DJ Davis. If they do that, I think it would be a good pairing. But they would need support. They have a full roster to get more talent, but they'll need to act fast regardless of who they get. Though, like I said, I'm hearing DJ Davis potentially leaning that direction. Meanwhile, I actually think Bay is a very enticing option for recruits, right? You've got Dre Pope, who's proven to be very active with that team. You've got maybe some of the most vocal players in SimWorld Hoops, led by Trey Hyman on that team. So if Best is going to add anyone from the California region, and I know this was a discussion point earlier in the season, if Best Coast is going to add anyone, I think they're competing with Bay Area more than they're competing with Showtime. Let's move to Latin America. I'm being told that J-Mo could potentially leave Latin America. Bilardi left. Obviously, he's with H-Town. I have not heard of any connection between J-Mo and Bilardi. You have to imagine it's on the table, but he could be one of those guys that we talked about earlier with a Lone Star landing spot. So if J-Mo is in fact preparing to leave Latin America, Lone Star could potentially be a spot if we're trying to read the leaves, see what's going on. I think he'd be a valuable piece there. Again, that's a team with not a lot there. It's 2 roster spots. You can step in and you can immediately change anything based off who you are. And I think there's obviously some respect around the league right now for Coach Woods in Texas. Akeem Young, Gulf Coast lockdown. I heard some whispers that he was headed to the north, that he was going to follow Coach Hyman. Those have not really been as active recently. I don't know if it's a done deal. I think earlier in the process, I think it was closer to being that, but I wouldn't rule it out. It just seems like the probability of that has fallen. What does that mean? I think Hyman should be focusing, and he probably is, on Canadian talent. There's a lot of it. It would make sense for him to just go all in for that. You don't have to use a sponsorship, which I think is a bonus. Here's the thing with sponsorships. Especially if you get a new recruit that comes in, right? That's 2 years of sponsorship. You don't know what's ahead, right? And so I think some of these coaches are looking at their sponsorships and they're almost hoarding them, right? If we give up a sponsorship to, let's say, our sixth man this season, and he doesn't develop into more than that, and there is just a Trey Hyman type guy, a Corey Yams type guy that enters the league next year, and now my sponsorship is to somebody else, I think teams are being very strategic with how they're using them. And I think with the North and Coach Hyman, I think that's the same. Hey, if we can keep our talent here, and if there's a big name that comes out that we think we can get, we're going all in on him. Not to say Akeem Young isn't a talented player, isn't a big name, but I think these sponsorships are being held pretty tight to the chest and used strategically. All right, so what about Arthur Lattimore? Not reporting anything this one, but let's follow the trends, okay? Let's look at Arthur, or let's look at these things, and then let's just keep Arthur Lattimore in the back of our mind, right? Okay, Coach Bilardi leaves Latin America. We're hearing whispers J-Mo is prepared to depart. Interesting. Coach Hyman leaves Gulf Coast. As we just mentioned, looks like Akeem Young might too. All right. Coach Banks leaves H-Town. As it's been reported, Cam Jones is rumored to be on the move. Coach Murray retires from Run DMB. Retires from Run DMB. Nick Hugo, it's reported, could be potentially on the move. Skinny Washington leaves Heartland Zombie Stars. Renzo Bryant, who I'm going to get to in a second, seems like he's gone too. Now, Pope has left Cascadia. If you just follow the tea leaves, right, if that's the trend of this thing, follow the tea leaves, every other big-time coach that has left, in his wake, their best player has prepared to depart. I'm not reporting Arthur Lattimore is leaving. I'm looking at the trends and saying it seems likely. Arthur Lattimore's not from the Cascadia region. He's from Texas. His coach is out the door with little idea and stability about what comes next. Again, if we anchor back to Lone Star, if they're reported to be a potential landing spot for top recruits, why wouldn't Arthur Lattimore be one of those names at this point in time? All right, last piece, and then we'll get out of here for the weekend. The Bryant brothers. Speaking of Renzo and him departing, I'm told he's targeting partnering with his brother Xavier. Where that is, I'm not sure, but they are aiming to be a combo from everything I've been told. Let's look at potentials. Reigning Trays can't be an option as of now because they have both sponsorships taken by Xavier and Kevon Jackson. Heartland Zombie Stars seems unlikely. They don't have a head coach currently in position, and all but one team in the Midwest, Lakeshore Drive, have coaching vacancies. So, Lakeshore Drive, if you're trying to not use sponsorships, you bring in an Indiana native. They don't have to do it, but they have a lot of guards on that roster as it stands currently. I think another option could be Queen City Kings. It would be a reunion. I've talked about Skinny Washington, one of my bold predictions that might come true. I don't know. Bernari James is the name that I had put there originally, but Renzo and Skinny have history. They coached and played together at Heartland Zombie Stars. It would make sense for him to try to bring that talent along, but he would be using both sponsorships on the brother. I'm not saying that's a bad decision. I'm just saying that's the situation he would be in. And then again, let's loop it all back. Lone Star, they've been linked to top-tier recruits. I would consider Renzo Bryant a top-tier recruit. No names. Texas is full of talent. So if they used both sponsorships on Renzo and Xavier, they would still have plenty of in-region talent to fill out a pretty stacked roster, right? If you brought in the two Bryants, you brought in Arthur Lattimore, right? You try to look around that city or that state and say, who else can we bring in? Well, you've got Ronnie Shanahan. He's from Texas. He's out in Bay Area. Could you try to poach him? Maradon has been, we saw the highlight of him earlier today. Great vertical threat at the defensive guard position. Nitty Gibson is in place. You start to build a really nice roster if you commit those there. So that's what I'm hearing. I'm not reporting that anything breaking is going to happen tomorrow or over the weekend or next week. But that's just it. That's all I'm hearing. That's what I think. And we'll be back on Monday. Maybe with some breaking news. I don't know. Not reporting it. I have no idea. I'm just hoping for a fun weekend. All right, y'all have a good one.